You want to know what 3 hours sounds like? It sounds like a phone call that goes to voicemail on the second ring. That's the sound my daughter made the week I needed her most. 3 hours, across 3 appointments, nothing she could manage, while she spent 4 full days flying to Florida to help her mother-in-law pick out throw pillows for a retirement condo. Not 3 hours for her own father, 4 days for a woman she'd known 6 years. But I need to slow down. Because if you're going to understand why I made the decisions I made, and I made some quiet ones, the kind that don't announce themselves, you need to understand who I was before that Tuesday in March. My name's Robert Caine, 63 years old, spent 26 years running my own electrical contracting business out of North Knoxville, Tennessee. Started with one truck, a journeyman's license, and a client list I built by showing up on time and doing the work right. Ended with 12 employees, a commercial permit to work anywhere in Knox County, and a reputation that took a decade to earn and would have taken one bad job to lose. I sold the business 2 years before I was ready to, because my wife Jean got sick and something had to give, and it wasn't going to be her. She passed anyway 3 years ago now, breast cancer, 18 months between the diagnosis and the end. I won't spend a lot of time on that. What I will say is that Jean was the kind of woman who kept a running list of every birthday in both our families on an index card she updated every January, and she always bought the card 2 weeks early so it arrived on time. When she died, that card went with her. Some things you don't replace. You just notice their absence every time you reach for something that isn't there anymore. My daughter is Amanda. She's 38, lives about 14 minutes from me, up past Merchants Drive, in a subdivision her husband Jason picked because it's close to the highway he takes to work. Jason is in sales, regional manager for a company that does commercial flooring. He's a decent man, I think, by his own measure, just not by mine, not anymore. They have 2 girls, 11 and 8. I see them when I'm invited. Now the procedure. Late February, my orthopedic surgeon at Tenova North told me the partial tear in my right meniscus wasn't going to heal on its own. Minor arthroscopic surgery, he said. Outpatient. You'll be back on your feet in 2 weeks, 3 at most. But no driving for the first 7 days, something about reaction time and residual sedation in the anesthesia protocols. And then physical therapy. 3 sessions the first week, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. A clinic on Merchants Drive, closer to my daughter's house than to mine. When I called Amanda to ask if she could drive me to those 3 appointments, I want to be very clear about what I was asking. I was not asking for money. I was not asking her to move in, cook, manage my medications, or change a bandage. I was asking for 3 rides, 40 minutes round trip each, a total of about 2 hours, maybe 2.5 if you count parking, over the span of 1 week. She picked up on the first ring. I remember that because she almost never picks up on the first ring, and for a second I thought, good, this is going to be simple. Hey Dad, what's up? I told her about the surgery, which she already knew about. I told her about the no driving restriction. I told her I just needed rides to PT. 3 sessions, Tuesday through Saturday. There was a pause. Not long, but I know the difference between a pause that means someone is thinking and a pause that means someone is already looking for a way out. Dad, honestly, this week is just, I don't even know where to start. Jason's in the middle of a huge Q1 push, so he's basically useless for anything logistical right now. The girls have their thing on Thursday, and I've got my own stuff piling up at work. I just don't know how I'm going to squeeze it in. I told her it was fine. It wasn't fine, but that's what I said because I'm 63 years old, and I've been saying that for most of my adult life when I meant something else entirely. You could just use Lyft, she said. It's really easy, Dad. I set it up on your phone already, remember? It's totally safe. She'd set it up on my phone 6 months earlier. Unsolicited, she'd been very proud of that. I told her I'd use Lyft. She said she'd come by soon. She didn't say when. She never does. Welcome to Dad's Bold Revenge. I'm glad you're here. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're listening from. Hit that like button while you're at it. This story is going somewhere you won't see coming. Here's what I didn't know that same afternoon. What I wouldn't find out until 4 days later, when a woman I'd only met twice came to my front door and changed the way I understood my own family. But first, Tuesday. I got on a Lyft at 8:15 in the morning. My driver was a kid, college age, from the looks of him. He had a Pine Tree air freshener swinging from his mirror and a playlist going that I didn't recognize a single song on. He helped me out of the car at the clinic door without being asked. He didn't have to do that, he just did. I sat in the waiting room and looked at the other people there. A man a little older than me, knee brace visible under his pant leg. A woman who looked like someone's grandmother, alone, thumbing through a magazine without really reading it. I wondered how many of them had lifted there that morning. The therapy went fine. The therapist was patient. I did the exercise. I took a lift home. I did not call Amanda. Thursday, I lifted again. Saturday, too. She called me Saturday evening. Quick. She was at a restaurant. I could hear the background noise, music, other conversations. How's the knee? Getting there, I said. Good, good. I'll come by next week sometime, okay? We'll catch up. I said, sure. Here's what I found out 4 days after my first PT session. 4 days after Amanda told me she couldn't fit 3 rides into her schedule. She was in Florida. Not for work, not for anything urgent. My neighbor Philip has known me 12 years. We share a fence line and a habit of complaining about the same 3 things every time we see each other. He came by on Wednesday with a bag of tomatoes from the farmer's market over on Sutherland, the way he always does when he's worried about me and doesn't want to say so directly. He won't just say he's checking on you. He'll bring produce. We sat on the porch. He mentioned the way you mentioned something when you've been sitting on it and can't sit on it anymore, that he'd noticed Amanda's car hadn't been in my driveway all week. I said I thought she was busy. He nodded. Then, carefully, the way someone speaks when they're not sure how you'll take it, he pulled out his phone. He'd seen a post on Facebook. Amanda had tagged herself at a waterfront restaurant in Sarasota. Tuesday, the same Tuesday I took my first lift to therapy. She and Jason had flown down to help his parents move into a retirement community on the Gulf Coast. 4 days, Tuesday through Friday. She'd posted a photograph of herself standing in front of a pastel-colored building with a resort-style pool visible behind it, arm around Jason's mother, both of them squinting in the Florida sun. Philip put his phone in his pocket and didn't say anything else about it. We talked about his tomatoes for a few minutes. He went home. I sat in the porch chair and did math the way I always do math. Quiet, no drama, just numbers. Flights from McGee-Tyson to Sarasota on short notice. Somewhere around $300 per person, maybe more. Hotel for 4 nights, because I couldn't imagine they stayed in the middle of a move. Rental car, meals, incidentals. 4 days, 2 people. Conservative, $2,200, probably closer to $25. She could not find 3 hours for me. She found 4 days for them. I went inside, got the legal pad I used to use for job cost estimates, and wrote 1 sentence in the same block handwriting I've had since trade school. March 11th, 3 Lyft rides to PT, Amanda in Sarasota Tuesday through Friday. I clicked the pen shut, set the pad on the kitchen table next to John's coffee mug, the one I still take down every morning out of habit, even though I'm the only one using it now. I didn't know yet what I was going to do with that sentence. I just knew I wasn't going to forget it. The following Monday, there were 2 knocks at my front door, deliberate, evenly spaced, not Amanda's knock, which is always 3 fast ones, and then she's already reaching for the handle. This was different. Someone who wasn't sure how they'd be received. I opened it, and there was Vivian. Jason's mother. I'd met her twice, once at their wedding, once at my granddaughter's birthday party 4 years back. She'd always seemed like a straight-talking woman, the kind who runs the church fundraiser, but also corrects your math if you're wrong about it. Retired principal from a middle school out toward Coreyton. She was holding a manila folder flat against her side, like she'd been deciding the whole drive over whether to bring it in or leave it in the car. Robert, she said, I need to show you something. I'm sorry to just show up. I told her to come in. She sat at my kitchen table, set the folder down, didn't open it right away. My son doesn't know I'm here, she said. He wouldn't be happy. But I've been sitting with this since last week, and I can't keep sitting with it. She explained that Jason had come to her house to use her printer. He does that sometimes when something needs to be printed properly, and he's in a hurry. She'd found the pages left in the tray afterward, by accident. She'd read enough to understand what they were. And she'd done what she told me was the only honest thing she knew how to do. She made a copy and brought it to me. She opened the folder and slid the pages across the table. It was an email chain printed out. Between Amanda and a family law firm in the Bearden area, I knew the firm. They do mostly estate and elder law. The emails were from 6 weeks earlier. Amanda had written asking about establishing a financial power of attorney for an aging parent who was beginning to show signs of needing assistance managing financial affairs. She'd asked how quickly the document could be drafted, what signatures were required, and this is the part where my eyes stopped, whether it was possible to complete the process without the parent being, in her exact words, fully aware of its scope in advance. Without the parent being fully aware of its scope. I am 63 years old. I ran a business with 12 full-time employees for over 2 decades. I have 2 commercial properties in my name and a retirement portfolio that my CPA reviews every quarter. I can drive, cook, manage my own finances, and wire a 200 amp service panel from memory. I read that line twice. Vivian said quietly. I also heard from Jason, not from Amanda, from Jason, that when she told him she couldn't drive you to your appointments, she said you had told her Lyft was fine and you preferred it. That you said, "Don't worry about it, honey, I'll handle it myself." I never said that, not in those words, not in any words close to those words. I looked at Vivian across my own kitchen table. She had the expression of someone who has done a hard thing and doesn't regret it. "He thinks she's just trying to help you," she said. "He doesn't see it the way I see it. I wanted to make sure you had all the information." I thanked her. I meant it. She told me on her way to the door that she'd driven herself to 3 doctor's appointments last winter during an ice storm because she'd rather do it herself than ask someone who doesn't genuinely want to be asked. She said she understood more than most people might about what it costs a person to ask for something small and be turned down. She left. I sat at the table with the folder. Then I called my attorney. My attorney is downtown in the Holston building. We've worked together for 15 years, going back to contract disputes from my business days. She knows my financial situation as well as I do, some months better. I told her what I'd found. I told her what I wanted to do. She asked me 2 questions, took some notes, and said she'd have a draft ready within 10 days. Here is what I was working with. When Jean passed, I had a simple will that left everything to Amanda. The house in North Knoxville paid off, appraised just under $240,000. A commercial space I still own over on Western Avenue, leased to an HVAC company through 2028, appraised around $350,000. My retirement accounts, a mix of IRAs and a SEP I'd built up during the business years, roughly $280,000 in total. I had never revised that will after Jean died. Same document, same beneficiary, same assumptions about who Amanda was and what she intended. I revised them. The house stays in my name for my lifetime. After I'm gone, it passes into a charitable trust administered by Volunteer Ministry Center, a nonprofit that runs senior services across Knox County. They operate a non-emergency medical transportation program that helps older adults get to doctor's appointments when they can't drive and don't have anyone to take them. 47 rides in their first full-funded quarter. I thought that was appropriate. The commercial property income goes through a donor-advised fund at the East Tennessee Foundation, designated for senior assistance programs. I set the grant parameters myself. Amanda remains the beneficiary of one account, a savings account holding $12,000, earmarked specifically for her daughter's extracurricular activities, which I had been contributing to quietly for 2 years. The girls had nothing to do with this. That didn't change. Everything else, restructured, irrevocable, executed on a Thursday afternoon in my attorney's office on the 3rd floor of the Holston building. I signed every page myself, with full awareness, with complete understanding of its scope in advance. About a week after that, Amanda called. Not about my knee. Physical therapy was finished by then. I'd graduated to home exercises. She didn't ask. She called because a land survey on a small parcel I own out past Powell had apparently moved through county records, and she'd come across it during a property search she was running for reasons she didn't explain. "Dad," she said, in that particular careful tone she gets when she's approaching something sideways, "I've been thinking. With the Powell parcel and all your other holdings, maybe it makes sense to sit down with someone, a financial advisor. Get everything consolidated and organized while we're ahead of things. It might just take some weight off your plate." Off my plate. I was refinishing a cabinet door in my garage when she called. My knee felt better than it had in 3 years. "Sure," I said. "Come for dinner Sunday. Bring Jason. I'll have Vivian over too." A pause. "Vivian?" "She and I have been spending some time together," I said. "She's good company. I'll make Jean's chili." Amanda said that sounded nice. I could hear in her voice that she didn't know what to make of the Vivian part. She didn't ask about it. She said she'd see me Sunday. I went back to sanding. Sunday came warm for March in Knoxville, one of those early spring evenings where the light hangs longer than you expect, and you can leave the back door cracked without the cold following it in. I made Jean's chili the right way, which is not the Tennessee way, but the way Jean's mother made it growing up in Ohio. Thick over rice, a splash of apple cider vinegar stirred in at the end, cornbread from scratch, green beans from the stand on Sutherland. I set the table with the good dishes, the ones Jean's mother gave us as a wedding gift, and that I use 3 times a year whether I have a reason or not. Amanda and Jason arrived first. He was in good spirits, talking about a regional ranking his sales team had just won. She was quieter, the way she gets when she's waiting to see how something is going to land. She helped me with the bread without being asked, which is the version of my daughter I remember from before, the one that still shows up sometimes, briefly, before something else takes over. Vivian arrived 15 minutes later with a peach cobbler and the steady calm of a woman who has made difficult decisions and doesn't second-guess them. We ate. We talked about nothing important: the girls' school play, the HVAC tenant's parking situation on Western Avenue, the late frost that had taken out half the tulips in my front bed. Jason told a story about a bad connection in Charlotte. Amanda laughed in the right places. For an hour, it was a normal dinner. When I stood up to clear the plates, I asked everyone to stay seated. I took the folder from the counter and set it on the table between us and sat back down. Amanda looked at the folder. Jason looked at me. "You mentioned wanting to help manage things," I said to my daughter. I kept my voice the same way I kept my hands on a job site when something was wrong and I needed the crew to stay calm, level, because the work required it. I appreciate that instinct, so I want to show you how things are already being managed. I slid the summary page across to her. 14 days ago, I executed an irrevocable trust. It covers the house, the Western Avenue property, and the retirement accounts. The documentation is on file with my attorney. You are not listed as executor. You are not listed as a beneficiary. Amanda stared at the page. The color moved out of her face the way color leaves a room when a cloud passes over the sun. "Dad?" "The trust income supports senior transportation services in Knox County," I said. "Among other things, it funds rides to medical appointments for older adults who can't drive themselves." I let that sit. She got it. I saw the exact moment she understood what I'd done and why. "This is about the Lyft thing," she said, and her voice was smaller than I'd heard it in years. "You restructured everything over rides to PT?" I looked at my daughter across the table. I thought about the morning she was born at UT Medical Center, about teaching her to drive in an empty church parking lot on Broadway on a Sunday morning, about the first job site I ever brought her to, 12 years old, hard hat 3 sizes too big, asking about every wire she could see. "I restructured everything," I said, "because 6 weeks ago you hired a law firm to discuss managing my finances without telling me. I found out. And it told me everything I needed to know about where we actually stand." Vivian did not move across the table. Jason's face went through a color I recognized from 30 years of watching men discover they'd misjudged something expensive. "That was just exploratory," Amanda said. "I was trying to figure out how to help as you got older." "You were trying to figure out how to take over," I said. Not harshly, just correctly. "There's a significant difference between those two things." She cried. Not a performance, actual tears, the kind that come from being caught in something you knew was wrong while you were doing it. I'm not saying that to cause pain. I'm saying it because it's the only honest version of that moment. "I love you," I said. "I have spent 26 years building something so that you would have a safety net when I was gone. I have been doing that your entire life. What I will not do is hand that over to someone who consulted an attorney about managing my affairs before asking me whether I needed anyone to manage them." Jason said quietly to the table. "I didn't know about the attorney." I looked at him. "I believe you," I said, and I did. Amanda left before we got to the cobbler. Jason stayed long enough to apologize in the private, careful way men apologize when they aren't sure exactly what they're apologizing for, but understand they need to. He helped Vivian clear the dishes. He shook my hand at the door and held it a half-second longer than usual. Vivian stayed until 9. We talked about John, the conversation I hadn't known I needed, with someone who'd never met her but was willing to sit with the memory of her. She told me about her own husband, who passed 11 years ago. We finished the cobbler. It was good cobbler. Amanda called the following week. The week after that, the calls got a little shorter each time, a little less certain. She didn't mention the trust. She started asking about my knee, which she hadn't asked about in 6 weeks. I answered. I didn't push. About a month later, she came by on a Saturday morning without calling ahead. She brought the girls. The younger one wanted to see the garage, the way she always does. I keep a half-built model railroad set out there that John helped me start before she passed, and the girl has been fascinated by it since she was 5 years old. Amanda stood in the doorway while her daughter moved the little locomotive along the track, making her own sound effects, and I stood at the workbench watching them both. "I'm sorry, Dad," Amanda said. "For the attorney, and for the week of your PT, I should have been there." I looked at my daughter standing in my garage doorway in the Saturday morning light, in the same spot Jean used to stand with her coffee on quiet weekends when I was working on something. "I know," I said. Not "it's fine," not "I forgive you," just "I know." Because I did know, and because some things need to be said plainly, and then set down without a lot of ceremony around them. The trust has not changed. My attorney has confirmed it cannot be changed without a court proceeding. That is not happening. The program, the Western Avenue Property Income, helps fund covered 47 rides to medical appointments in Knox County in its first full quarter. 47 people who needed to get somewhere and had no one to take them. I think about that sometimes when I drive past that building. I drive past it most weeks on the way to Philip's house, where we argue about football and produce and all the comfortable things two old men argue about when they've been neighbors long enough to stop being careful with each other. I'm not angry at my daughter. I want to make that clear. Anger is a furnace. It needs constant feeding and it burns through everything you put in it, including the things you meant to keep. I stopped feeding mine a long time ago. What I did was simpler than anger. I paid attention. I wrote one sentence on a legal pad. I made a phone call to an attorney I trusted. I made decisions that couldn't be undone, the same way I always made decisions that mattered, slowly, quietly, and only after I was sure. People will say I overreacted. That restructuring everything over 3 Lyft rides was disproportionate, excessive, a punishment that didn't fit the offense. I'd tell them it was never about the rides. The rides just showed me the map. They showed me exactly where I ranked when no one was performing anything for anyone, when the audience was gone and it was just a phone call and a real answer and a choice. That's when you find out what you actually mean to someone, not on the good days. On the ordinary Tuesday when there's no one watching and you just need a ride. I built this life with these 2 hands, the same hands that wired half the commercial buildings on the west side of the city, that taught a 12-year-old girl what a circuit breaker does and why it matters. The same hands that are finishing a small bookshelf right now, out in the back of the garage, cherry wood, nothing fancy. Something to do on the afternoons when the knee cooperates and the weather is right. Amanda wants to find her way back. I can see her working at it. Slowly, the way trust actually gets rebuilt, not in a single conversation, not through one good Saturday morning, but over time, through 10 years of small choices that add up to something. I'll let her try. That door stays open. But the terms are mine now, because I built everything that's in this house, and I'm the only one who decides what gets done with it.